Welcome back, everyone, to the Broker Room podcast. I'm Michael Simon, and today we have with us Alison Alston. Welcome, Alison.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yes, ma'am, my pleasure. Allison leads Lodestone Real Estate at EXP, a residential sales team licensed in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Since 2012, she's built a reputation for true consulting, helping clients decide whether to sell, rent, or hold based on their full financial picture, not just the transaction. And she's also been ahead of the curve with AI, having used it for nearly 3 years now. So, Allison, thank you again for joining us. Let's get right into it.
Great.
And to start, let's start about, tell us about your journey. How did you build Lodestone into the consultative team it is today? And what inspired you to focus on long-term client outcomes versus rather than just closing the deals?
So for me, I got my start. I spent 10 years in independent schools doing fundraising for them before I got into real estate. And so I joined Lodestone as an agent on the team. And then 2 years later, had the opportunity to buy out the original owner and take it over. Um, Both of us were really focused on kind of that longer term client mentality from the beginning. I think for me, it came from my background with the fundraising, and a donor life cycle is significantly longer than a real estate client life cycle. And then for her, she came from an investment banking background. So same thing with that client relationship and building, it takes a longer time. And so we already had that outlook on things. And then when I transfer this over to real estate, to me, you can have a transaction or you can have a relationship. And I've always preferred having a relationship. If you have a transaction, you're a Pop Tart, right? And that's my analogy that I use, right?
Yep.
Michael, you just contacted me and you texted me an address and you're like, hey, I want to go see this. And I'm like, pop, here I come, right? Let me go. You don't really have any control over the situation. You're not creating a relationship and you're not creating opportunity for the client, right? And I
Yes.
think this is something that a lot of people struggle with from a perception thing of, well, but if I don't go and get them into the house and show them this right away, they're going to go work with someone else. Maybe, right? But then they're not the person that I'm looking to work with, right?
Yeah.
Because I want my clients to want to sit down and have that consultation and talk through, why are they looking for a house right now? Or why are they looking to sell right now? What's the immediate goal that they have? And then let's talk about, what does 3, 5, 10 years look like, so that we can align these things and our actions that we take today to set them up to have the best chance of achieving those goals tomorrow.
Yeah, that level of, care and engagement, I don't think you really see that too often today. Most people are just more like, hey, I'm interested in this, give me the bullet points and let's get it done. I really love that approach because, it helps separate you from what everyone else is doing. And not only that, but it's going to absolutely provide a better experience, for the client. And,
Yes.
when it comes to that experience, let's talk a little bit more about that. What does a typical client engagement look like for you and your team right now? I know they're all
Yeah.
different and unique, but, if you could try to.
No, I mean, there's definitely a lot of similarity between them. Whether you're a buyer or a seller for us, our first step is always sitting down and having that consultation and talking about both short and long-term goals. So that's always our first step. Our second step is talking through the financials. Right? Have you met with a lender? Have you had that pre-approval? Have we dug in to see what things look like? We get a lot of people who'll come to us and say, well, I did some research online and I think that's amazing. Like, I love that people take initiative and start looking at stuff themselves. But that's just the first step, right? And they'll be like, well, I found this loan calculator and it says I can afford $500,000. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that, right? So then we break down from that overall big number. What does that look like monthly? Right? Is that monthly payment comfortable? Because if it's not, this big number is completely useless, right? Because you can't truly afford that because it doesn't feel good. And then one of the other things I always ask my clients is, okay, so now we've got your monthly number. What does it look like? So let's say that is 500,000. We're comfortable. I need you to be able to set aside 1% or 5 grand every single year into a savings account for your house, right? That will help cover those short-term, long-term maintenance things that pop up. The, oh crap, the water heater just went, right? I tell everyone, I have a water heater that was 4 years old, and my husband and I were on vacation last year, and it apparently caught on fire while we were on vacation. Thank
Oof.
goodness it caught on fire inside the tank, and so the water inside put it out itself,
Yeah.
but we certainly did not have on our list, right, just 4 years in, a brand new water heater. But we've always set aside and prepared for that, so it was fine, right? And so talking through kind of some of those other affordability factors that a lot of people don't think about, right? You have to furnish the house. Most people are moving, especially first-time homebuyers, from a small apartment. They might have one bed, a couch, maybe a chair. That's it. And now you're moving into a 2, 3, 4 bedroom house. Who's paying for that furniture? Where is this stuff coming from? So just kind of talking through all the other aspects of it. So really a true consultation on the financial aspect of it. And then we talk about the fun part, right? Which is the fact of, all right, well, what does this dream look like to you? Right? Because it is supposed to be fun and it is a huge accomplishment and something that should be exciting for people to be getting their first home, their second home. I don't care how they may, right? Um, and so to me, I think that then becomes that process of talking through what does it look like? What does it feel like, right? What does that lifestyle feel like to them? And how do they envision themselves in their ideal world? Is it walking to everything? So we need a more urban environment. Do they want more land and space? So we need something a little bit more suburban. So talking through what that looks like. And then the final piece for us is then connecting them with the agent on our team who's the best fit. We all specialize geographically in the different areas. We live where we sell so that we are truly the experts and we know residential, commercial, like all the development and things happening that could impact this investment for you.
Mhm.
And then we also introduced our team concierge. She is not a licensed assistant. She's a Charlotte native, though, and she helps with all their lifestyle needs outside of housing. So if you are going to need to do new registration because you're moving in from out of state, here's all the DMV information. This is how you book your appointments. This is the location that'll be closest to your new home, right? Here's physicians, doctors, lawyers, dentists, right? The dry cleaners, the grocery stores. What are some of your favorite restaurants that you'd be looking for? We want to provide that entire lifestyle experience. And so that's what it typically looks like for us when you sit down with us. If it's a seller, obviously we're flipping some of that conversation a little bit and we're talking more on, all right, what is your current mortgage payment? And what does it look like if we turn this into a rental instead of selling it, right? What if we start building a portfolio for you? We talk a lot about investment portfolios in this country, and I think everyone always assumes stock market, right? Stocks and bonds. And I'm like, hey, houses, they're commodities too, right? You can buy and sell them, you can trade them, they
Yeah.
appreciate, right? And so we talk to them about that. And what we find is many times people aren't comfortable with that. It's a little too far outside of like what they think is what they're supposed to do. And the idea of becoming a landlord is terrifying to most people. Um, but our biggest goal with any kind of buyer, seller, investor is just to make sure they understand all of the opportunities available to them so that they can make the decision on what's best for them.
Yeah. That process, you talk about going above and beyond. That's truly remarkable. Somebody, buying a house, what you just mentioned, that outside consultant alone who you mentioned who was not licensed, just what they do. I've never heard of somebody going through the home buying process and, having all that available to them. That's usually something they have to do either beforehand or, once they are in the process and actually buy the home, then they got to go out and do it themselves. So
Hmm.
that's really incredible that you offer that. And when it comes to the consultation process, do you work
Hmm.
with any financial planners at all with that? Or
We
is it
do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. We have financial plan. We always ask if someone's already working with one,
Yeah,
because in an ideal world, they already have that relationship established. And they're having that conversation. So that way we're kind of just stepping in and aligning with those goals rather than creating something from scratch.
yeah,
But if they haven't had that conversation yet, we have some great partners and they're always more than happy to sit down and talk through it. And sometimes people aren't ready for that next step, right? But it at least opens the door to the conversations for that. Um, it's something that I've really pushed quite a bit because when I was in my 20s, and I was still working in the schools, we had a retirement plan. And so it was pretty set it and forget it. And then I met my husband, and he was a financial advisor when I met him. and started learning a lot more about the process, right? About estate planning and wills and trusts and all of that stuff. And just how you can manage your money in a different way. Um, and so as I learned more and more about that, it became clear to me that you really need to have all of these layers in order to reach whatever those goals are, right? I don't truly believe that you can do it in just one way. And so I think the more we can partner together and bring in experts, um, it's a win for the client, right?
Yeah.
Always. And so, yeah, so we do partner with financial advisors. We have CPAs, we have tax advisors. We have a bunch of different individuals that are all involved in this. Even our closing attorney, if there are questions about things. So I just had one, it's a physician, and they were like, we're not sure how we title the property in order to best protect ourselves because malpractice lawsuits are a huge issue in their industry. And so before we were even under contract on a house, I was able to reach out and connect them with one of our closing attorneys and say, hey, here's kind of the situation. And can you advise us the best way to go about doing this?
Yeah, that's to have that type of network, it's really incredible. I mean, yeah, you see sometimes agents will partner with, CPAs, advisors even, but it's like you're prepared for everything, really. You've crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's. It's amazing.
Thank you. We try. Every once in a while we get some interesting ones.
Oh,
We
sure.
we have started telling people we will help you with all of your needs, except for dating. We are not a dating service. You laugh, but we have definitely had some people come in like, so do you have any single clients? And I'm like, I do, but I am not. We're not crossing that line. Like, no, mm-mm.
Yeah, that maybe an
Um,
ethics violation there.
yeah, I'm like, mm-mm. But we do try to be helpful, and a lot of this came out of just my husband and I, when we relocated here, we relocated with his job, and we were assigned, a corporate relocation person, and they were a very nice person, but they weren't particularly helpful. And we came and we spent a weekend kind of driving around and exploring and trying to figure out as much as we could on our own. But it would have been really helpful to have a guide to help kind of understand where we were coming from, what we were looking for, and help to point us in the correct direction. Um, when we first moved here, we ended up in an area of Charlotte that I personally like to describe for us as suburban hell. Um, Everybody laughs when I say that. It's a lovely area and it's phenomenal for many people. But for two people who just moved from an area where we could walk to everything, and now the nearest everything is a 15 to 20-minute car ride away, and that
Oh, yeah.
everything is a giant big box store instead of a mom and pop, it was a really big culture shock for us. And so thankfully we made the decision. We'd actually put an offer in on a house and then because of some issues with the house pulled out. But we made the decision to just go ahead and rent. And we were so happy we did that because it gave us 6 months to really explore and figure out where do we really want to spend time and what does that look like. And it ended up being nearly 30 minutes away from where we had first gotten our rental. So big difference.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Sometimes you're just gonna have people who are just gonna do the bare minimum, what it says in the description, and then that's it, good luck. So
Yeah,
I like how the experience, though, the personal experience, motivated you to, go above and beyond and take that next step. So when you have clients who are in your position, they're not gonna have to worry about that. So
exactly.
yeah, so kudos to you on that. And you also own a company bringing steel into the residential market to build better, more affordable, longer lasting homes. Now, how did that venture come about?
Yeah. So a friend of mine and I started on this journey almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I was getting frustrated. I was running into more and more clients who were in that 55 plus age group. Their current homes just were not suiting their needs anymore, right? It was too many stairs, right? Not the right layout, a variety of things that needed to happen. And while on paper they had a lot of money because their house was worth a substantial amount, all of their money was tied up in that. And so it didn't really leave them any freedom to be able to do what they needed to do to move on. And we started looking at some different products and trying to figure out a way to make it more affordable for them to relocate into a home that was more suitable for them. And one of the things that we kept running into was okay, Well, even with the funding, there aren't a lot of options out there that really work well. And a lot of the stuff that is being put up is frankly being thrown up, and it's not particularly well built. It's inexpensive, it's cheap, right? But I use the word cheap because it is cheap. The materials are not meant to last. And for someone in that age group, making a move is a really big and onerous step. And so when they're doing that, it's usually with the thought of this is going to be the last place I'm moving to, right? And so we want something that's going to outlive them. Um, and as we looked at what was available, we just weren't seeing it. And so that kind of snowballed into, okay, well, how do we build houses better? Right. And how do we get rid of some of these issues? And a lot of the things that I've seen over the years, even if a house is well built to begin with, I'm going to say well intending, but well intending people come in, and whether it's a DIY project or John Smith from the street who happened to door knock and said he's an expert plumber, electrician, whatever, they do renovations, and people cut corners. And even worse, they cut structural support members. And so fast forward down the road, and now someone owns that house and they're having issues. And I was like, there's just got to be a better way of doing this. And so we ended up coming across a company that was already using steel for commercial, and had a lot of experience there. And we're like, this translates perfectly over to residential, right? Steel is fire rated to 1800 plus degrees. So if God forbid there is a fire, your framing's still there. So you have something to rebuild from, right? Because of the fire rating, it also reduces the cost of your homeowner's insurance tremendously. So we bring that into line, right? There's a lot of different layers to affordability with housing. And so it's like we wanted to look at all of them. So we bring that back in line. Now, because it's made out of steel, it's not as easy to just oopsie go and cut it, right? And so we've got all of the plans and everything together. Everything is mapped out, everything is logged. And so if you ever, God forbid, had an issue with one of the joists in your wall, you'd contact us and we'd be able to look up your floor plan and say, okay, yep, this is what this number is. This corresponds. We're going to reprint it. We're going to come out and it's taken care of, right? Easy peasy. You don't have termites or wood destroying insects because they don't chew through steel, right? So that's not an issue. Um, there's a lot of benefits to it that far exceed, right, just kind of the normal structural piece of it. But it also creates something where there's a warranty tied to it, right? Like we're offering a 50-year warranty on our programs. There is a warranty tied to it that will likely outlive that member. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of where that started. Where it snowballed into was, well, instead of just stopping with framing, why don't we just build ADUs, right? So we're going to take accessory dwelling units, we're going to make them fun. We're going to make them something that people are proud of and proud to call home. And we're going to create an opportunity for someone to take an inexpensive, well built piece of steel with all of the trappings and finishings you would expect in a house, and we're going to pop it in the backyard, maybe if they're kids, right? Because now mom and dad have their own space. They're helping to pay the bills for the kids. They're taken care of. They're able to get out from under their other house, right? It's a win for everybody. Or maybe they need some income because they're living significantly longer than they planned. So we put one of these in their backyard and now they have a rental and they start generating income, right? So there's a lot of different opportunities that kind of came out of this that we realized, hey, this could really start changing things.
Yeah, it certainly sounds it too. And you've been doing this for, what was it, 3 years now?
No, so we started on this journey with the seniors about 3 years ago. We launched the steel company. So Finca Living is the name of the company. So we officially launched in October.
Okay. Okay, so about, my math is off here today. About 8 months in so far. Yeah.
About 8 months, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's off to an amazing start, and I think there's gonna be definitely a lot of potential for growth there, especially for that market. I've spoken to people who even specialize in working with seniors, above, well, I shouldn't say seniors at 55, but, folks who are that age group and older, and then,
Hmm.
it's unfortunate what they are subjected to and taken advantage of, and then, like you said, with the lumber, I mean, I didn't even know, like, a lot of that was so let's say, just, not the best practices, I guess we'll say, and
Mm-mm.
then, the situations that can arise from that. And then you take the steel, which can eliminate so many of those issues. You throw in the warranty that you mentioned, and it's such a good way
Yeah.
to really make sure that they're ultimately protected. And like you
Yes.
said, they're most likely going to outlive it. So the warranty, or they're not going to outlive the warranty, excuse me. So
But
it's a
yeah,
win-win for
right.
everyone.
It is, and steel's it's sustainable, right? It's renewable. It's recycled aluminum that we're putting together into this. Timber is not a limitless industry. And I look at the bigger picture of we have a massive housing shortage. It's a crisis in our country. We are using all of this wood to build said houses, but we have an insane rate of deforestation, and it's not an endless supply. Right? An average life cycle for a tree to be used for timber, it's a minimum of 15 years. It's a long time for something to regenerate and grow. Right? And so we take all of that and we look and we say, okay, well, if we're clearing all of the land to put the houses on, how are we replanting the trees in order to build the more, right? It just doesn't make sense. And so we just started looking at all of this and I was like, it's just not making sense, right? It's just not adding up. And it seems so obvious. And yet nobody's really talking about it, right? They're not talking about the impact that these massive storms we keep having year after year are having on the timber industry. They're not
Yeah.
talking about the impact that that's having on our supply chains because all of a sudden, not only do we need to add new inventory, we have to rebuild tens of thousands of homes, right? And so it's crazy all of these factors coming into play and it's like we just have to get creative.
Yeah, you do. And that's another thing I've heard too from a lot of people I've spoken to on here about the shortage and what a problem that's becoming. And I actually want to use that to move into our next segment. Thank you for talking so much about your practice and what you do. What I
Mhm.
want to do now is zoom out a little bit and talk about what we're seeing in the industry in terms of
Yeah.
trends as a whole. So, Charlotte in particular has seen massive growth, but also shifts in inventory and holding periods. You mentioned when we previous spoke that I believe the average homeowner stays about only about 4.5 to 5 years. So,
Mhm.
what are the biggest trends you're seeing right now in the Charlotte market, and how are they affecting both the agents and the homeowners?
I mean, I think the biggest thing right now is Charlotte has become a really, really is I'm gonna say highly focused and specialized market, and what I mean by that is every single neighborhood has a different sales picture than the one next to it. Historically, you kind of had, I'm gonna say the city of Charlotte itself, and that had one set of statistics and inventory rates and everything else. Then you kind of had the outlying region of Charlotte outside of the city, and those were a little bit different. And now it is literally neighborhood by neighborhood. And so we have some neighborhoods that have 12 to 15 listings in the same neighborhood, and we have other ones that it's up. There might be one, and it's gone in 3 seconds later. And so it's really, you really have to know exactly what you're selling and where you're selling. And I think that is one of the first times, at least since I've been in, that that's been the case. You could really pull statistics and look, um, and get a pretty good generalization, even if you weren't wildly familiar with an area. And you really just can't do that anymore. One of the things I just talked about with my team this past week was when we run relevant sales for a property, typically we only would look at closed houses, right? We'd look and see what's on the market now, what's under contract, but we'd really put the most weight into what had closed, right? And what that kind of price per square foot was and where that was netting. And now you can't do that anymore with the rate environment and kind of, I'm going to say, the political whiplash that we're experiencing between now we're at war, maybe we're not, now we are, right? The rates are up, the rates are down, we're all over the place on the merry-go-round. Um, but so as you're looking at those things, we're seeing such big shifts in the market from week to week. And so you really have to be paying attention to what came on, what's going on with it, right? And what does this look like? And we're really starting to price in much more conservatively on listings than we would have before. Again, neighborhood dependent. But for many of them, we're playing it really safe because we're like, listen, if you need to move this and your new purchase is contingent on this, we can't test the market, right? We really need to go in strong because this is where the buyers are at. Um, and in some cases, it's worked out fabulously, and we end up with multiple offers, and they get even more than what they should have on the market per se. Um, but in other cases, it's still not enough. Townhomes, we have a massive supply of townhome inventory in the city of Charlotte. And so townhomes are really difficult to move right now. And so that's something that you really have to pay attention to. And so you really have to know who is your key audience that you're targeting and how do you go get in front of them.
Yeah, and to just piggyback off that a little bit, as someone who's running a multi-state team with a strong consultative model, what do you think are the top challenges, you and your agents are facing today, whether it's, scaling operations, maintaining quality experiences, or just trying to stay competitive in a stabilizing market like you just described?
I think the biggest challenge is figuring out how to find that sweet spot between the reality of the market and what the client's needs are, right? As you said, we talked about how Charlotte has a traditionally much quicker turnover than maybe the rest of the nation. And so having those consultations up front and saying, okay, Michael, you just told me you're only going to be in this property for 2 to 3 years. We've really got to be pretty specific over what you are buying and watching that price point and where this location is, because you're not going to make the same return over the next 2 to 3 years that you would have over the last 2 to 3. And so we've got to make sure you're not coming out and you owe money at the end of this if you go to move.
Yes, very true.
Right.
And, when we talk about, the trends and the challenges, now we get to the fun part, how you mentioned that you're starting to use or you've started to use AI
Mhm.
pretty much ahead of the curve for a couple of years now. So how has that, integrated with your business? And by extension, if have you seen it, integrate with anybody else in the industry?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of agents using it. I got started on it because one of the agents at our brokerage was vocal and did like a free online training about it and was like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." And I was like, "Well, this is fascinating." And it happened to be around like marketing and social media stuff in particular. And I'm the first person to say I can't stand social media. If anything could disappear and go back to the way it was beforehand, it would be no more social media. Um,
I'm with you on that.
I'm just like, I just don't get it. I don't understand why people wanna watch and see what I do all day. I just find it fascinating. But anyhow, but so that's kind of how I got started, and then I just started digging in and I was like, "Well, what else can I do?" And a second big impetus for me was my assistant, when she let me know that she was expecting her 4th, and I had a panic attack, because I was like, "Okay, I am so reliant on you, it's not even funny." And I was like, "Okay, well, of course, well, you'll get maternity leave just like the last few times, like, how the deal works. You tell me when you're ready and we just work through this." Um, and she was like, "I don't want to come back to working full time. I want this to be part-time." And I was like, okay." And I was selfishly cringing at the thought of having to train a new person. I have been very fortunate. I have had 2 assistants, and both of them have been marvelous. And they kind of self trained themselves by just watching me. And I was like, the chances of me striking that lucky gold putt a third time are probably pretty slim. And so, we discussed having a virtual assistant. We discussed some different options, and I started digging in and I thought, well, you know what? Let me play around, right? Let me see what I can get AI to automate and take off my plate. And so I literally just started keeping a list. And so every day I would write down things that I did more than once that day. And then at the end of the week, I would take a look at it and I'd pick 3 things and I'd go through and I'd look and I'd say, okay, how can I take this off of my plate? How can I replicate it, right? Is it as simple as building a template or is it something that I can train a bot to do? We added in AI callers. So we have 3 AI callers now. One of them hilariously is named Susan, who was my former assistant. She, I'm not sure, was like fully on board with it when I told her, but I was like, take it as a compliment. And I think she likes it now. Um,
Way to honor her memory, sure.
yeah, I'm like, "You know what?" I'm like, "It's a fun, you're still here."
Yeah.
But so We started with AI callers. You know, one of my biggest things, like we talked about the Pop Tart, and one of my biggest things with my agents is you have to rest and recharge. We are no good to our clients if we work 24/7, right? Nobody's good to anybody if they do that. And we should not be answering the phones at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 a.m., whatever, right? And I understand that some people work shifts, and so that's their time for them. But for the majority of the world, that's not when we're up and conducting business. And so having callers to intercept and take those calls, right? To be able to shut down the phone lines, kind of put things on pause so people could take that rest. To have chatbots that can interact with people, right? And they have questions on our websites and doing that. To have chatbots that as people are coming in and asking questions about properties, we can get them answers quickly and effectively. And it's stuff that you don't need an agent to do, right? And then allowing those things to then kind of replace and take that lift off of us so that then we're more available for the stuff that does take us, right? And so
Yes.
when we've found that property, now we can go and spend the time and do the digging and figure out where permits pulled, like what is going on here. Um, so we've done a lot of that. And then I'd say kind of as we've moved forward, we just keep using it more and more. I create a lot of my marketing for it. Um, Anytime we have a new listing, we have an entire template built out that we plug in the information for it, and it creates a content schedule for us. And it creates all of the content. So that way we're keeping that fresh and it's allowing us to do so much more for our clients. And I think that's the biggest thing that I always stress with people when we talk about AI, because a lot of people fear it. It's not replacing us, it's freeing us up to do the things that I believe a human is truly meant to do. And it's allowing us to do so much more for our clients than we would ever be capable of doing on our own.
Oh, yeah. This isn't the first time I've had this come up on here, and it's certainly not gonna be the last, but yes, that's the general sentiment among everybody I've spoken to, and I have no
Yeah.
doubt it's gonna be for everyone I'll speak to in the future, you know?
Yeah.
The agents aren't gonna go away completely, but, the gap between those who use it and don't use AI is certainly going to widen, and
Yeah.
when you say about things that agents just shouldn't be doing, I mean, it's true. It
Mhm.
just helps make life not only easier for the agents, but also for the clients as well. It provides a better experience for everyone. So that's something I think, we can all agree on as we see AI continue to grow and develop. And
Yeah.
you had mentioned, a list that you made of what want to automate. And as I'm
Mhm.
sure time has gone on, that list has changed. What does it look like now? Is there any like a wish list, so to speak, that you have? What you would like it to do?
Um, no, I feel like every once in a while we'll realize that we're kind of duplicating effort somewhere. So this past week I realized we have an automation that kicks in. So whenever we have a property go under contract, it sends out some kind of key activities and assigns some tasks, right? And so it's an automated task that gets assigned so that our closing coordinator knows, hey, this property's gone under. Here's your next steps, right? And then the agents have theirs. And that way, all of our clients are getting the same exact experience, no matter which Lodestone agent they're working with, right? We're all following that same process and making sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed. And I realized that we had that duplicating in 2 different programs. And then I also realized that I have some stuff that's specific to the states, right? So in South Carolina, there's a 6% property tax surcharge if you are not a primary residence.
Oh,
So there's an extra step and some extra forms that you need to fill out when you buy a house there to make sure that you're billed appropriately. Well, that automation was part of some of our other states' closing checklists. And it was like, oh, that doesn't make sense there, right? And so we just had to split it out and say, okay, for North Carolina, it's this. In South Carolina, it's this. In Georgia, it's this. Um, One of the things that I'm working on right now is my CE. One of my biggest complaints about real estate as a realtor is I wish we had a national guideline and system, and every state followed the same exact calendars, et cetera.
oh yeah.
Um, so in North Carolina, which is my primary licensed state, I have to do 8 hours of CE every year, and it's on a July 1 through June 30 calendar. In South Carolina, I have to do my CE every 3 years. in Georgia, I have to do it every 4 years, but based on the last date of my birth month. So trying to keep track of all of these things, and then on top of that, we have separate fair housing, ethics, like different requirements that are CE, but they only rotate on their own schedules separate from the state stuff. And so when you're trying to manage all of this, you're like, okay, wait, what? And so I've had this written out on a board in my office, but I'm like, this is not the most effective way because if I'm not in my office and I'm not seeing this, so that is one of the things that I'm working on, trying to automate somehow, some sort of here, this is triggered and this is, and I'm sure it's just as simple as a calendar task reminder or something, but I want to streamline that a little bit and make the reporting of the CE a little bit easier. So that's something that I'm working on. Um
Okay.
but yeah, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job. I was really proud of all of the agents on my team. Before I even prompted them, they all started really digging in and starting to look at how they could integrate AI. And they're doing a great job with it.
That's great. It's happy to see that it's been working out so well for you. And as somebody who is in the AI space myself, I mean, yeah, that probably could be solved with a, reminder if you just set it out, but I had no idea that it was so, convoluted. I mean, I had to do
Yeah.
CE for my securities licenses when I maintained them and
Mhm.
also I still have a life, health, property and casualty insurance licenses too, but that's just cut and dry. 21 hours of CE, 3 hours of ethics every 2 years, that's it. And then it covers
Mhm.
everything. That's for Rhode Island,
Yeah.
but if I do it there, it's covered everywhere else too. So I don't have to
Yeah.
do it on top of that.
No, ours is all very state specific and they change too. So, for example, South Carolina, don't quote me on this, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, they got rid of the reciprocity between North and South Carolina temporarily. Then a few months after they pulled it away, it came back. But now, while our licenses are reciprocal, our CE is not. So we used to be able to just take CE in North Carolina and have it apply, but now we have to do it separately. And again, it's on a different schedule. And so you're just sitting here going, okay, wait, what? I mean, I took 47 hours of CE this year. And I was just like, okay, well, that was a lot. Okay. And some of it gets very repetitive because you're taking the same course just in 3 different states. So it's a little much.
Leave
But
it to the
yeah,
government for efficiency.
exactly. Exactly.
No matter
So
what your
yeah.
politics are, they're not gonna be efficient either way, so
No, I'm stealing that one. I
yeah,
like that, yes.
yeah, that's one
Yes,
thing everybody can agree on no matter what your politics may be, so
yes.
but Allison, this has been outstanding. We talked about, how you got started, your businesses, what's going on in the industry, and as we come up towards time here, one thing I wanna ask you about is the future.
Mhm.
So, if we take a look at the next 6 to 12 months, any particular, goals or milestones you have in mind, things you wanna see achieved with your businesses?
Yeah, so I have a few. So for Lodestone, internally, I am really wanting one of my sales agents to outproduce me. That's been my goal for them for a few years. I'm like, come on, someone take it, right? Take the lead and run with it. So that's kind of an internal goal with Lodestone. Externally, our goal has kind of remained the same. It's just we want to help as many people as possible. And whether they're buying, whether they're selling, whether they're investing, just making sure that they know that these are the opportunities that are out there for them. And we're going to help support them whichever direction they choose to move forward in. So that's always kind of our goal there. From the Finca side, my goal is to really get the word out there. By the end of this year, I would love to have at least 100 of these done in the North Carolina, Georgia area, and just get people really opening their eyes up to what's possible if we just change some of what's always been done. My hope is that we get enough fincas out there that it starts to change the perspective of the builders themselves. And then the residential builders are going to start seeing all those homes be built out of steel too. So that's kind of my goal for that.
That's awesome. Really looking forward to seeing how that works out for you. I have no doubt it's gonna be a great success.
Thank you.
Allison, again, I this has been incredibly insightful. I really wanna thank you for sharing your wins, your market wisdom, and your forward-thinking approach. And for our listeners, if anybody wants to connect with you, learn more about your company, or even work with you, potentially, where would be the best place to do so?
The best place they can find us on our website, lodestonerealestate.com, or we are on Instagram at Lodestone REI. So those are probably the two best places to find us.
Fantastic. Well, Allison, thank you again. This was excellent. Truly appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Michael. You too.